Welcome to Scholarly Writing Part 2, AMA Writing Style in Grammarly. Scientific writing, it doesn't mean that you're going to produce a document that is not understandable by the masses. I love this cartoon by Calvin and Hobbes. Basically, he's using these really big words and he's saying, academia, here I come. You can read through that quickly, but you're writing a paper that would still be somewhat understandable by a layperson. Some tips. Avoid using phrases and slang like break a leg, dig in, bite your tongue, that kind of thing. Not that you'd use those particular phrases in a scientific paper, but I have seen some of those type of phrases come through. Avoid using pronouns such as I and we. It should be third person. Avoid contractions. Use cannot instead of can't, did not instead of didn't, etc. And avoid informal abbreviations such as ASAP or FYI. And the first time you abbreviate something, make sure you spell it out. So type 2 diabetes, you spell it out, and then in parentheses you're going to put T2DM, and then you can use that abbreviation throughout the rest of the paper. Paraphrasing versus quoting. In general, you only use direct quotations if you have a really good reason, and a good reason is not that you're having a hard time figuring out how to paraphrase. So you should only quote to present a particularly well-stated passage, and you should try and summarize or paraphrase whatever you can. I have seen a student, they turned in a first draft of a paper and it was basically all quotations. We want to have as few quotations in a paper as possible. So how to paraphrase? Of course, when you read the passage, try to understand it as a whole and then take notes on it. We did that reverse outline assignment, and that helped a little bit about seeing what the gist of the paragraph was about. Be selective unless your assignment is to do a formal or literal paraphrase, which you're not. You usually don't need to paraphrase an entire passage. Instead, you're choosing to summarize part of that material. Think of what your own words would be if you're telling someone about that subject that's unfamiliar with it. Remember, you can use direct quotations of phrases from the original within your paraphrase. So you can use maybe a specific term or section of terms that they use. Just put the quotation marks around that part of the quotation. There's a couple methods for paraphrasing, like look away from the source and then write. So don't try to use exactly their words, but how do you think you would write it after you looked away from the source? And take notes as you go through, then set the notes aside, and then paraphrase from the notes instead of the original. So we're going to be using the AMA Style Guidelines, American Medical Association. The difficulty with AMA is it does not always follow specific rules. You're usually using a specific guide for inline citations and bibliography, but each journal can have specific rules about how they want the article formatted. It's up to the author to follow these rules. For example, the Journal of the American Academy of Physician Assistants is a journal that has a list of information for authors. So if you take a look at, this is their site here. This is the Journal of American Academy of PAs. This is how they want that paper formatted. So you can go through each of these sections. They tell you how to do it, how to put in citations, and what you should expect to do for a paper if you're going to submit it to this particular journal. So the AMA writing style for our program has 5 different areas that I want you to concentrate on. So we're going to go through those. So for formatting, you're going to do 12-point Times Roman font, 1-inch margins all around, double spaced. If you're talking about authors, you're going to say Smith and Jones reported. If you're using more than 2 authors, you're going to put Smith et al. You don't have to put every single name of the authors of the paper. Do not spell out numbers, except for if it's the first word of a sentence. Ordinals 1st through 9th, when you get up to 10th, you're going to use the number. If it's spelled out in direct quotation, you're going to leave the direct quotation the same. And numbers next to each other, such as 13, 15-year-olds. Putting 2 numbers next to each other in that case would make it a little bit confusing. So let's take a look at our sample paper here. And you can see right now I have Arial 11 point, so of course it's easy just to change all of that by highlighting it and making it Times New Roman. and then making that 12 point. Okay, so that's what you're going to do. And of course, to the page setup gives you the margins. All right, title page. Each of your paper should have a title page. You'll have the title of the paper. You'll have a page number, and that is right justified on every page at the bottom right corner. And then you'll have, so this title of the paper here, this is what appears in the header section. Then you'll actually have your title of your paper, your name and class, your name, class name, and date. So for this paper, so for our paper here, we're going to put in the title of our paper, and I'm going to put childhood obesity, and then I'll put my name and the name of the class, and then the date. This doesn't need to be bold. I'm going to take that bolding out, but we're going to just put this all centered. Okay, and then I can, of course, make a new page here, bring that down. We can just bring this down a little bit. Okay, so then the next thing I want to do is put in the header. So all I have to do is insert headers and footers, and I'm going to say header, and I'm going to put the title of my paper in all caps, and then I'm going to change that font as well, Times New Roman and 12. Then I'm going to put in a footer, so insert headers and footers, the footer, and at this point you can do insert page number, and you can pick this one here that has the page number on every page. You can see it's in the right corner. And I don't know why sometimes it doesn't do that, but we can just tab over. And so now I have my first page, and if I go down to my second page, you can still see I have my header here and I have my page number. Next, we're going to look at headings and subheadings. So the major headings are bold and centered, and then subheading 1 is bold and left justified, subheading 2 is indented and bold, subheading 3, etc., etc. This is all in our style guide, and I'll show you where that is as well. But if I wanted to put in, so this introduction should be centered. And then let's say I wanted to have a different subheading here, and I'm going to call this epidemiology. And then the next one would be indented. And you would go on from there. Inline citations. Now we've talked a little bit about this, but this gives you some guidelines for inline citations. 1 reference. This is 2. This is 3. And it will put Zotero will put these in for you, and I showed you that before, but if you were doing, so here I have 1,3, but if I added another one there, it would, if I added 2 there as well, it would make it 1-2. You just have to make sure you put all of them on the same line. So if you're going to do that, if I wanted to put one here, and I wanted to put Borello, and then I wanted to put another reference. Let's put this one. It would put all of my references there. And you can see how it did 3, 4, 6. So if they were in order, it would put a dash in there, and since it wasn't, it just put those numbers. All right, outside of periods and commas, inside colons and semicolons. And when you use author names such as Smith and Jones reported on the questionnaire, you can put the reference number right after the author's names. You need to read the author guide if you're going to submit for a journal. For example, the journal that we just spoke about, they asked that the superscripts be put inside of periods. It's a little different than some other journals do, but we are doing them outside of the periods. With your bibliography, of course, Zotero does a decent job of formatting, but you should always double check those. So, of course, we have our bibliography here. You just want to kind of give it an overview to make sure, oh yeah, it's putting in the journals, it's putting in the dates, it's putting in everything that it should be. If not, you might have to go look at your Zotero and see if you need to make some corrections. Introductory paragraph. Forget what you learned in English 101. I know they sometimes like to tell you to start with a funny story or a joke or an anecdote or something like that, but you don't do that in scientific writing. However, you should start your paragraph with some interesting information. Do not write how you speak, and do not use I, which we talked about before. So in this paper here, I started off my paragraph with the United States childhood obesity has tripled since the 1970s. Kind of catches the reader's attention a little bit. These are some examples of sentences that I have found in papers. You don't need to say briefly, I would like to touch on some. First, you don't use I, you don't need to use briefly. You don't have to say you're going to touch on something. Just talk about the information. On this one, they said this is where the epidemiology is tricky. You don't have to, you're not making a judgment call on that. And you don't have to, and don't ask questions. Is this due to anything more than genetic drift? Just answer the question, don't ask the question. So you can say this can be due to genetic drift and whatever else. And of course the bottom question uses that phrase, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So you don't need to use that in your writing as well. I put in here a couple examples of good paragraphs or beginnings that I've liked. So this one is about flight attendants. I will let you read through those on your own. I'm not going to read them to you. Here's another example about pancreatic cancer. And here's another one that you can read through. Give you an idea of writing style. One of your assignments, it's not a graded assignment, so if you don't do it, you're not going to get penalized, but I would like you to do it. You're going to choose one of the paraphrasing samples in the discussion. It's in the module, and rewrite it in your own words. You'll find they're a little fun to do, so you're going to rewrite it in the discussion board and then comment on just one other student's work, so it shouldn't take you more than 10 minutes of your time. Now Grammarly. So each student receives a copy of Grammarly Premium for their use, and you can find it in Okta. So if we go over to Okta, and up here in the search, if you just search for Grammarly, you can see there's Grammarly Premium. It should be there. If it's not there, let me know. You should be able to sign in with Google, or it should automatically sign you in. This is your Grammarly account. You can also add it. It should get automatically added to Google. So check on that as well. They have apps, so you can install Grammarly for Microsoft Word, Grammarly for Mac, Grammarly for Chrome. You can see that I already have that installed. So if I go over to my paper here, it has numbers here, so it doesn't know what to do. It's saying it should be Habits 3, but what I'm going to do instead is just put a period here, and that's going to get rid of that problem there. Okay. You can also install it for Mac, and that it works in other apps on your Mac as well. So if you have any issues with that, just let me know. And the other thing I wanted to point out is you do have a link in this module to the RAMA style guide. So this goes through almost everything that we went through today. It tells you how it talks about having an abstract. We don't have an abstract for this paper. The headings, the headers, the numbers, the times, date, measurements, figures, and tables. If you have figures and tables, that's what you would use. How to format your references, and it goes through each of those things. So that's it for my screencast for this one, and please reach out if you have any questions. Thanks.